is Raina Campbell, your Chief Dream Driver, and welcome to the No Parking Podcast, where through conversations and discussions with creators like yourself, we'll find interesting approaches to help you take your dreams out of park, put them in drive, and ride towards success. Hey Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 64 of the Dreams and Drive podcast. Today our guest is social impact entrepreneur and founder of Shea Yeleen, Rahama Wright, and we're going to be talking all about how you can inspire and promote social change with your business. Rahama opens up about her journey building Shea Yeleen and how she has been able to help change the lives of working women in Ghana, and I really think that you guys are going to love hearing her story. Rahama also was a guest on the debut episode of Centric TV's show, Queen Boss, and she dives into major lessons she's learned from that experience, as well as other things that you can take away about what it takes to build a business from the ground up. We also talk about what inspired Rahama as a child, the idea of not fitting in, the Shea Yeleen business model, how you can challenge the status quo with your business, and also what the whole idea of social impact investing means and how Rahama deals with that in her business. And I think that you guys will really be inspired by Rahama's advice on how you can work through challenges, doubt, and fear. This episode has so many good nuggets of information, so make sure that you have a pen and paper when you're listening. So before we get into the episode, make sure that you guys are subscribed to our channel wherever you're listening, iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, wherever. Hit that subscribe button. And if you really like the episode after you hear it today, go and leave us a review. I love to go in and read what everyone's saying. To share your favorite moments from the show, please follow us on social across the board. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and you can find us at Dreams and Drive, and you can use the hashtag Dreams and Drive. For show notes, go to www.dreamsanddrive.com and click on episode 64. And you guys, remember, we're going to be doing a giveaway of the week. And for this week's giveaway, Rahama is going to be offering a body butter, a soap, and a lip balm from the Shea Yeleen collection. So if you want to enter that contest, all you have to do is go to dreamsanddrive.com/win. That's dreamsanddrive.com/win to enter the giveaway. Hope you guys enjoy this episode. Being a guest on today's episode of Dreams and Drive. We're so excited to have you on.
Thank you so much, Raina. I'm excited to be here.
You know, we were talking beforehand, before we got started, Dream Drivers listening in. And so I was connected with Michelle, who's connected with Rahama, and we had been in touch for about a year. And now this is happening because this conversation was supposed to happen a long time ago. So I'm so happy. And, you know, you were just on Queen Boss, so we definitely have to talk about that. And you're doing so much with your business. But as I like to start all of our podcasts, is let's go back. So close your eyes, Rahama, and take it back to when you were an 8-year-old, right? What inspired you as a child?
Wow.
What inspired you as a child? How did you see the world then?
When I was young, I was an avid reader. And so I was totally a bookworm. I spent all my free time reading. And I think that for me, when I was little, I just had a really huge imagination. And it came from the books I read. But also, I grew up in a multicultural family. My father's side of the family is from upstate New York. My mom's side of the family is from West Africa, from Ghana. And so I was very curious about where my mom came from and very curious about Africa. Ever since I was little, I would always ask my mom questions about what it was like for her growing up. And I was just always very curious about Africa. And so I knew, I would say probably when I was, you said 8, but I'm just going to increase my age a little bit. Probably when I was 10, 12, I knew that I wanted to work and do something in Africa. I didn't know what country, but I was a little slightly obsessed with the continent.
Wow.
When I was in high school, I got the Peace Corps brochure. I knew I was going to do Peace Corps after college. And initially, I was on the track to become a foreign service officer. And my plan was to work at embassies and essentially just be a diplomat. But after serving in the Peace Corps, my career trajectory shifted and changed. And I decided I wanted to do something that was more impactful in terms of like connecting to people's lives at a very grassroots local level. And that's what inspired Shea Yeleen.
So let's rewind a little bit. You said you were slightly obsessed with Africa. What did slightly obsessed look like, and how do you think that really molded your desire to work there?
I would just always have my mom tell me stories.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it just went back to I was a child that really loved reading. I loved stories. And she would tell me stories about what it was like for her to grow up. And I knew that her life was very different from mine and that I had access to more resources than she did, even when I was young. And let me just say, I'm the eldest of five. And grew up in a family where I had a lot of responsibility very early on, helping my mom. And my mom grew up in a very conservative Muslim community, and in a time where young girls, it wasn't really encouraged for them to go to school. And so she wasn't afforded the opportunity to go to school. She, through, long story very short, through an uncle, she was able to convince her parents to send her to school for a little bit. And so she was able to get up to a sixth grade education. But that really was something that stuck with me because my mom was always like, go to school, get good grades. She really harped on me and my siblings about just being strong academically. And it was because of the fact that she didn't have that, and she knew that education was a way to improve her kids' lives. And so that obsession of knowing that what my mom experienced as a child was very different from what I experienced as a child, I was very curious about some of the reasons as to why her life was so different from mine. And so that's where this whole idea of serving, volunteering, living in the community, it really came from the connection I had with my mother.
Did you get to visit Ghana as a child?
Not really. It wasn't until I was 12 between 10 and 12, my dad, who after Peace Corps was working for a lot of nonprofit organizations, non-governmental organizations doing agricultural and forestry work, but he was working in Burkina Faso, which is also in West Africa. Mm-hmm. So when I was 10, he had a contract. It was a 2-year contract. And so my parents decided, instead of him working and kind of like commuting back and forth between the two countries, they would move the entire family there. And so from 10 to 12, I lived in Burkina Faso. And that was kind of my first experience actually living in an African country and having a memory of living in an African country. They homeschooled us. And so they hired a teacher. They got U.S. books. And we essentially had, excuse me, we were essentially homeschooled, but using the U.S. education system and books and curriculum. And it was my first time to actually see a lot of what my mom shared in her stories, to see it firsthand. You know, we would go to the market and I would see some kids didn't have shoes on, for example, or, you know, we celebrated different holidays. There were a lot of Muslims in our community. So learning about Islam and seeing other kids practicing it. And so that was a really pivotal, critical time for me as a young child. And I think really influenced my ideas about the world and my ideas about what I wanted to do.
Did you have a general idea about the world? Like, how did you view the world as a 10 or 12-year-old then?
Well, I've been accused of being kind of a serious person, and I was even a very serious child. And my view of the world as a young person was, there's unfairness in this world and there is inequality in this world. And I know that's like some heavy stuff for a 10-year-old to be contemplating. But I thought about it. I would get bothered when I saw people begging or when I saw poverty. It really bothered and affected me. And my mom was very philanthropic. And, we, in our community, we were one of the wealthier families, of course, having kind of, the American connection and my dad's job, etc. And my mom didn't take that lightly. And I remember one time, me and my brothers, we went to the market and we were just playing. And one of the kids came up to us. But I don't know if you've ever heard of the term garibu.
I haven't.
So a garibu is a young child that's sent out to beg, and whatever that child gets goes back to the mosque. And it's a practice where, some parents will send their kids to the mosque, and the mosque is supposed to like teach them, train them, but then you're supposed to give back by like going out begging and bringing resources to the mosque. And so there were a lot of garibus in the market that day, and we were just playing. We didn't know, what a garibu was and what their lives were like. We were just playing like kids play. And so we're like, come over to our house. So we like brought them back to our house. And my mom clearly saw that there was an issue, and she asked the young boy, she was like, where's the mosque that you guys live in and where you're taught? And so he told her, and she said to him, every morning, tell all the garibus to come to our house. We'll serve you guys breakfast. And it turned into a thing where every morning they would come, we would serve them breakfast. And then every night they would also come and we would serve them serve them dinner, sorry.
Oh, wow.
And so that just shows you like, that was that's the woman who raised me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a far stretch to see the work that I'm doing today, because I would help her, and I didn't really understand it. I just knew all these kids would come to our house and we'd give them food. But it was just this idea of, when you have certain resources, it's not only for your immediate family, it's for the community. And that was a value system that my mom definitely taught me during our time in Burkina Faso.
So I feel like this could be a whole podcast within itself, because it's just so fascinating. And I feel like there must have been a shift for you when you went back to the States, right? How did things change when you went back to America?
So I think for me, those 2 years, so by the time I came back, I was just entering middle school. And I definitely felt very disconnected from my peer group because, we not only traveled throughout Africa, but we also traveled throughout Europe. And so I never felt like I fit in, to be quite honest. I kind of always felt outside of my peer group. And, when you're younger, you want to fit in. Mm-hmm. But I think for me, because of the experiences I had as a child, I never necessarily felt that I needed to fit in, because I just had a very different way of looking at the world. And so some of the things that my peer group would think, like New Kids on the Block was like super popular. Mm-hmm. And I missed all of that. I wasn't here for any of that. So people would talk about things and I just couldn't relate to it because I wasn't around for it. And so I felt like for me, it was one of those things where I became very comfortable loner isn't the right word, but kind of being outside of the group. And I think to be an entrepreneur, you have to be comfortable with being different from other people and being different from what you would consider your peer group, because oftentimes entrepreneurs are spearheading ideas that other people either haven't tried or other people aren't, what's the best way to say this? You're different. I guess you can't fit in because, you're trying something new, you're trying something different. You are essentially taking an idea or a passion or something that you think is very important to you and you're creating it. And oftentimes to be that creator, you have to be different. There has to be something that's influenced you to give you kind of that confidence to think that you can achieve it. And so for me, I've always been comfortable not fitting in. And I think that that's the core of what an entrepreneur is. You are an individual who sees the world in a way where you're willing to take a risk to change what it is you want to change and what it is you want to achieve.
I love that you said that. I think that's a perfect segue into, I want to start talking about how you came or how you became an entrepreneur. But first, so you started Shea Yeleen. Is that how you say it? I just want to make sure.
Yep, that's how you say it.
But you have it was a social enterprise before it was a for-profit company, right? Or is that okay? So maybe walk us through those first years and how you decided that you wanted to create an organization that was going to create change in Ghana.
So when I started Shea Yeleen, I was fresh out of the Peace Corps. Imagine, for the very first time in my life, I was living in a rural village. I was working at a community health center. And I saw a lot of issues and challenges around specifically women and their ability to take care of themselves and their children. Oftentimes, women would come into my health center, they would leave unable to buy medicine. And it just really struck me that a lot of the items that they needed to buy weren't really that expensive, but they just did not have the means. Most of them were subsistence farmers. They lived off the land. There weren't a lot of opportunities for them to generate income. So I decided to research income generating activities. I had previously interned at the American Embassy in Burkina Faso and was introduced to Shea Butter. So as a Peace Corps volunteer, I started delving further into the shea industry and learning about the connections between women in the Sahel region of Africa and the shea industry and the shea marketplace. And so I decided I wanted to bridge a gap that I saw, which was helping women take this natural resource that's homegrown, that's only within their communities. You can't find shea butter anywhere else in the world. It only grows in the Sahel region of Africa. Women are the traditional harvesters. Yet when you see products being sold in the marketplace, there's a disconnect. You don't really hear a lot about women. And even companies that market fair trade shea butter, you don't really hear about living wages. And women are very disconnected from this multi-billion-dollar industry that is an industry that includes the confectionery industry, because shea butter is a cocoa butter substitute and is used in chocolate making.
Really? I never knew that.
Yeah.
Never knew that.
A lot of chocolate that we eat has shea in it. People don't know because it's not required on the label. And the reason why is that shea butter has it's much more of a solid. And so cocoa butter melts at a lower temperature. Shea butter melts at a higher temperature. So you can actually keep your chocolate harder in transit. And so that's why chocolate manufacturers like to put shea butter in their production, because of that reason. Wow. And so a lot of the chocolate that we eat has shea in it. So the bulk of the shea industry is actually in chocolate production. And then, of course, there's the beauty industry that also utilizes shea butter in a variety of products, anywhere from hair care, skin care, shampoos, conditioners, moisturizers, lip balms, makeup, beauty. And at the beginning of the supply chain are women in Africa. And I always say this, which is a woman in Africa is impacted by any product that has the words shea butter. There's no way an African woman was not part of that supply chain. It's impossible.
And no one thinks about that.
And so
that's something that we don't, like, I never thought about that before. And I only use products that have shea butter in it because it just works better on my, you know what I mean? Like, I honestly, I don't mess with lotions. Well, I want to say there's some lotions that have shea butter, but I actually like using the actual butter itself.
The pure, yeah.
Yeah, so that is
well,
something.
The thing is, you're making a good point, which is there's a lot of products that say shea butter and it's a lotion or it's a cream or something. But then you look at the ingredient list and shea butter is all the way at the bottom. And so it's not really shea butter that you're using. You're using a diluted product. And so there's that as well. And not only that, let me add another layer, which is the majority of shea butter that enters the global marketplace is not even made in Africa. It's made in Europe and Asia.
So
That's
is it
almost
still
90%
shea
of
butter?
it's shea butter that's been chemically refined. And so it's stripped. It's not pure natural organic shea. But that's what makes the bulk of the marketplace, because similar to a lot of raw materials in Africa, whether it's cotton, whether it's oil, whether it's diamonds, whether it's gold, whether it's gum arabic, the processing is not happening in Africa. The raw material extraction happens, and then manufacturing happens outside of the continent. And so I'll give an example. Cotton is shipped out to China and then processed into t-shirts and then sold back. So you find this model in so many different places and so many different sectors and industries in African countries. It's really hard for the local communities to be able to benefit from value-added products. And that's part of the reason why you don't see a lot of these economies progressing and growing. If you're only selling cheap raw material, your community members cannot make additional income. And so that's why I got involved in the shea industry. I saw an opportunity to help women create value-added products, not just take shea seeds and sell them to large seed oil manufacturers, but actually take the seeds, turn it into a value-added product, turn it into shea butter, turn it into soap, and then connect that product to the marketplace, removing middle people so that women can benefit further up the supply chain.
So maybe you can talk to us about the model with Shea Yeleen and how you're actually helping the woman. Is it through like us buying the product, or is it something that's happening?
Huge part of it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we start at the very beginning, meaning when the women collect the fruit, because shea butter is actually the seed of the shea fruit. So it's a seed oil, and it's extracted from the shea fruit. And so we work with women's cooperatives. Our model is really simple, helping women organize into cooperatives, providing those cooperatives access to production equipment, access to training, access to capital, helping them transform those seeds into shea butter or into soap. And then we connect that to people like you who purchase that product. And the value add is by helping them create these value-added products and these finished products. We're helping them go from making pennies to dollars. The women in our cooperatives that we work with are generating living wages through our model. So even before we bring a product and you guys buy it, we make sure that they're compensated with a daily wage that is 5 times their country's minimum wage. And that number was calculated based on interviews of the women in our communities to get a very clear understanding of what their cost of living was. So how much does it cost to send a child to school? How much does it cost to buy medicine? How much does it cost to have access to health care? How much does it cost to invest in other income generating activities? How much should you be saving? All of that is part of the model that we utilize to ensure that these women are generating living wages. And then by you purchasing it, we're able to work with more women in more communities, because ultimately what we want to do is bring as much product to market that's coming directly from these women so that they can have access to increased income.
So they make everything. So the whole production process starts and finishes in Ghana, and then they ship the product to the U.S. and you can then sell?
Well, the packaging actually happens here.
Okay.
And part of the reason why is that we can't get access to some of the material that we need. So that's, again, another manufacturing issue. Ultimately, one day we want to be able to do all of our packaging in Ghana with the cooperatives, but that requires a lot of capital. That's creating like a full service manufacturing facility that's outfitted with machinery, that has access to consistent electricity, like all of those things that are challenges right now that we can't do. But eventually, hopefully in the next 5 years, we'll be able to do something like that.
So let's talk a little bit about running the business, because I hear so much passion of you. I can just tell that this is your baby. This is I can just tell by, But I feel like we all need something that we're slightly obsessed about. And that's why I was so interested in how you being slightly obsessed as a child, what that looks like. Because I think, like, even thinking back to my own childhood, like, I was, like, similar to you, I was a book fanatic. Like, my mom used to have to take books from me because I would try to read books, like, walking across the street, pushing the cart in the supermarket. Like, I always had a book with me. But I think about those things that I became slightly obsessed with. I was slightly obsessed with just trying to figure out things I didn't know the answer to. So I just did a previous interview before this one, and I was talking about, like, I can sometimes go down the Google tunnel of no return, where I'll just start Googling things and then try to find this answer and that answer. So I've always been very naturally inquisitive. So I definitely think that you should pay attention to those things that you become slightly obsessed, because that's going to be the fuel, right? That's what keeps you going, is trying to find that answer to not the answer, but I don't really know how to say it, but you get where I'm going, right? Like, that's what's fueling you. So let's talk a little bit about the.
I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, it's deep. And after doing these interviews, I see a theme with all the guests that come on the show. As children, they had, even people who didn't think that they wanted to be entrepreneurs, there's definitely that, that need to know, right? That's definitely, whether it's through books, whether it was through making stuff, whether it was through, being defined as a troublemaker, somebody who went outside the norm, who was okay with taking risk or doing things that other people didn't want to do. It's so important to pay attention to those things.
I agree with you. And that's why when you're little, yes, you want to fit in, but it was just one thing that I just never fit in. It didn't matter what, I grew up in a rural upstate New York town. I was the only Black child. And so when I went to college and I was around Black people, they'd be like, "Oh, why do you talk like that?" So it was like, okay,
this is my voice. That's why.
Yeah, I don't fit with them either. So it was, or I didn't know anything about hip hop. So it was like, what's wrong with you? And so that has always been the story of my life. But I think that, to your listeners, there is something powerful in not fitting in. There's something powerful in kind of having your own way of looking at things. And that's what we need more of, I believe, in this world, is people who challenge convention, people who challenge the way that we think about things. For me, part of creating a social enterprise that works in Africa is because I want to challenge what we think about when we think about Africa, when we think about, products that come out of Africa. One of the things that naysayers would say to me when I started, and you have to keep in mind, I started Shea Yeleen in my early 20s, right after Peace Corps. So I was very young. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, you can't get anything high quality from women in rural communities or women in rural villages. How are you going to train them? How are you going to make sure that the products are going to, anyone in the US would want to buy the product?" Well, I could have stopped there and be like, "You're totally right. We don't have access to certain tools. We can't compete against these very large manufacturing facilities that have, all these machinery and access to certain production equipment and ways of producing." We're working with women in very rural communities. Some places where we work, there's not even access to running water. But something said to me, try anyway. And now we're in Whole Foods. And Whole Foods has one of the strictest quality standards of any retail outlet in the country. And so it just goes to show that you have to be willing to stand alone in a sense you have to be willing to not be like everyone else. Because that's when when you see real change, is when you challenge the way other people think about an issue, or challenge the way other people think about whether or not you can accomplish something that you put your mind to.
What's a way that Shea Yeleen has challenged that for the industry, or for, for others who have questioned, why are you doing this?
Right. 100%. I believe larger brands that were not looking at supply chain issues. I won't put anyone out on the spotlight right now.
Mm-hmm.
10 years ago, no one was thinking about this issue. But you'll see in the last couple of years, there are large companies that are now saying, oh, well, we work with cooperatives too. When Shea Yeleen first started, no one was talking about this issue the way we were talking about it. And even today, companies that say they work directly with women's cooperatives, they're not talking about living wages. They're talking about fair trade. And I think there's a difference between living wages and fair trade. And I believe that being a voice and talking about this issue, being vocal about it, and then being able to prove the concept that, yes, you can create high quality products sourced from women's cooperatives in Africa, has changed how other companies have sourced their products. And I'm very proud of that. I think that what we're doing is the bare minimum. Anyone who buys Shea Butter or uses Shea in their product needs to support women in Africa, period. That should be just like a basic. And I think that having a company like Shea Yeleen and my voice in the industry is key, and has created another perspective that gets consumers thinking, well, why isn't this company doing this?
And you know what? I think something's also important from that you brought up is being an entrepreneur, thinking about who you are affecting or how others are being affected by the product that you're trying to make, especially if you're a product-based entrepreneur. So service entrepreneurs may be a little bit different, but supply chain is definitely something that you should think about. So let's say you're a fashion entrepreneur and you are buying your products wholesale from China, right? If you don't actually think about how is the factory treating the worker that I'm then putting my name on the clothes that they're making? You know what I mean? And that's
Right.
something that I think a lot of people now are, as you said, even beyond the beauty industry, people are trying to really, I guess, get themselves out of trouble, because people are now investigating the conditions of how these products are getting made and people that are behind it. So I love that you brought that up.
And I also think that the younger generation cares about these issues. And when I hear about entrepreneurs who are in their 20s now, everyone almost across the board is creating social impact. I think it's very rare today to meet someone who's an entrepreneur that's just looking to make money. And I think that's really important, especially with kind of the political climate that we're in right now. Mm-hmm. More and more people are saying, I want a different world. I don't want to buy clothes that's made in a sweatshop. I don't want to eat food that's making the farmers who produce this food unable to eat the food themselves. I think that we are now in a new age where profit, you can't just make profit anymore. You have to be able to show your impact. And I think that that's so important, because I want all entrepreneurs to think about the impact and the ability that they have to change certain industries that have for decades, if not centuries, have made money based on keeping someone else down. And I'm really encouraged when I hear from, I spend time working with entrepreneurs at the Johns Hopkins Social Innovation Program. And just every single person that I speak with wants to do something positive, whether it's in education, whether it's in medicine, whatever sector you can think of, creating solutions that's making social impact. And I think that is what a true entrepreneur is. And that's what a true business leader is. It's not simply how can we make money anymore.
So how do you tell the reals from the fakes? Because I feel like at the same time, some people are just slapping that on their social impact
Mm-hmm.
just because they know it's the hype. So as somebody who's an entrepreneur, how could educate our dream drivers listening in who are still consumers about how to know whether or not, or how to do the research to know whether or not this company that you're investing in or you believe in is truly doing what they say they're doing?
I think research. I
Mm-hmm.
think we live in a world now where you can get information at a snap of a finger. And it really is about really researching these companies that you want to support. And for Shea Yeleen, one of the things that I do is we bring our shea producers to the US. When we launched in
Wow.
wholesale, we had two of our women from the cooperatives come and tour the stores with us. And now they get to see what we sell the product at, what price we're selling it at. They get to meet the same buyers I'm pitching to. They get to connect to the customers who are buying our product. And that's when real transformation happens. When you're able to allow an individual to have a full understanding of the supply chain that they're a part of, and not only verbally, but actually experience it themselves. And so the two women who came, they went back to the community and they shared, their pictures, they shared their stories, they talked about the things that they saw, and that imparts further knowledge to their other community members and their peers. And I think that it's so important. I always say that I want to bring a voice and visibility to the women that we work with. And I think that it's not really difficult to separate the true from the false, because at the end of the day, the ethos of a business will come out. It will seep through. You can't pretend for too long. And I think that for educated customers, ask questions, ask before making a purchase, ask those important questions. Some of the great questions I get all the time for Shea Yeleen is, well, how do you know that women are making the increased income that you're talking about? We've set up a system where we track the payments. We just don't send money without monitoring where that money goes. We have a bank account in Ghana that's managed by myself and a local financial manager. Anytime a woman is paid, she provides like a thumbprint stating that this is. And the reason why is because a lot of the women we work with aren't formally educated, so they can't write. And so we said, okay,
Mm-hmm.
thumbprint. And so we have documentation of those payments and those withdrawals. And I think that it's really asking those companies to tell you, well, how do you know? How do you structure it so these people are getting the benefit that you're talking about? But I think for me, it really is that transparency and doing these trips where these women have come and they've represented it themselves in terms of what our business model is like. But I think just, be vigilant, look at how that company communicates, look at the different programs that they support, and ask questions, pick up the phone, shoot an email. And I think as an educated consumer, you can figure out whether or not that's a company you want to support.
So let's.
And
Oh,
lastly, I would also say
sorry.
the other thing too is see, what's the best way to say this? Which is like, what is the foundation of that company? Like, has
Core
that company,
values.
yeah, not only the core values, but like, did they just start marketing this, or was this something that they've been doing for a very long time? And I think that that's also important, because what is the core value? Is it, oh, we see that this is important to the customer, so let's start marketing it? Or is this something that has been part of the business from day one?
Mm-hmm.
When you look at companies like Ben and Jerry's, like Burt's Bees, where it's very clear they had founders that had a very strong ethos, whether it was environmental, whether it was related to the ingredients, whether it was related to living wages. I think that's different from companies that create corporate social responsibility programs and just like, slap something on to make it look like they care about a certain issue versus companies that are actually created around a specific issue.
I feel like this type of entrepreneurship is so important, but it's not the one that's always mainstream, right? It's not like the sexy conversation that people want to have all the time. But let's talk a little bit about what, a lot of people who may know you from your recent debut on Centric TV show Queen Boss. How did that come about?
Well, Queen Boss was an opportunity for me to basically do something that's completely outside my comfort zone, to be very honest. I mean, I am a social entrepreneur. I'm a volunteer at heart. I'm a return Peace Corps volunteer. Being on a reality series wouldn't be at the top of my list of something to do.
Really?
But someone sent me the link and they're like, hey, I think you should apply to this. And I was like, my first instinct was like, absolutely not. I'm not doing this. And then I kind of gave it a couple of days and I was like, well, why not? This could be an opportunity to really bring some exposure and visibility to Shea Yeleen and also talk about the mission that we're doing in these communities and give some light to something that is very important to me. And so when I took it from that perspective, I was like, okay, why not? Let me apply. So I applied. And then I was called in for the casting interview and went through that process and then was selected to be the part of the group of 18 women to launch this new show on Centric.
That's so cool. So let's talk about, you were episode 1, right?
I was episode 1.
What was it like? I mean, I'm not sure how much you can reveal, but like, what was it like to actually, because I definitely know this is the edited version that we as viewers saw. But what was it like behind the scenes to just be in company with these other women and also just to be face to face with the judges? Like, what was that whole process like?
Well, the judges were very tough. I'm not going to lie. I am a speaker. I've spoken in front of so many different audiences from the UN, the World Bank. I've presented at very high level governmental events, and no joke, doing the pitch was one of the most challenging things I've ever done because I could not get a read on any of the judges. Their faces was like stone cold. And wow. I said something that I normally say, and it usually will get, people to laugh. I started my pitch with, I'm here to butter you up. And usually people will like, okay.
A little chuckle, like, oh.
Yeah, nothing. It was like, I was like, oh, snap. Like, this is going to be challenging. So it was definitely hard to read the judges. They had their poker faces on. But, my approach was to be authentic, to share my story, and to talk about an issue that was important to me. So that I just stuck to that. I was 100% very, very happy and satisfied with how I was presented on the show. I didn't make it to the next round, which was a semi-final round, because they thought I was too far advanced in comparison to some of the other entrepreneurs, which I think is a huge compliment. And I truly just love the fact that Centric, the judges, BET, they're supporting Black women entrepreneurs, because I believe we need more support. Very excited to see all of the other women who kind of put themselves out there, pitching their businesses and talking about an issue that I don't think we talk about often enough, which is how do we create more successful Black women entrepreneurs?
Definitely. Like, how do we scale too? Because a lot of people are starting businesses, but a lot of people aren't even, they say most businesses don't make it past that 3-year mark. So it's definitely how do we support, and then how do we allow them to scale and to grow? But thinking about your time on the show, what do you think was like one of your biggest takeaways, whether it be from what you've learned or from seeing the other 2 contestants? Like, what was something that you really walked away from the show feeling empowered about?
Yeah, well, we really didn't interact too much with the other contestants. So that was, we didn't interact too much with them. So the takeaways were more kind of the personal impact on me. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say, you have to do things outside your comfort zone. I have spent the majority of my time building this business in environments that are very comfortable, whether it's the policy side, whether it's the community organizing, the grassroots organizing. That's my comfort zone. That's, where I started the business, where I spend most of my time. And I wouldn't necessarily say that I am adverse to risk taking because I'm an entrepreneur. You can't be adverse to risk taking. But I definitely was very proud of myself from the standpoint of doing something uh, completely different from anything I would have tried in the past when it comes to looking at a business decision for Shea Yeleen. And so I would encourage people, even when you think you're doing something outside your comfort zone, push yourself a little bit more. Because it's been a tremendously positive for Shea Yeleen. I mean, we had like 20,000 views on our website.
Wow.
Yeah, we converted very well on our site. We did a watch party with MGM Resorts National Harbor, which just opened up in DC. They curated a 16 product line for Shea Yeleen, and it was actually part of my pitch was to get the money to help us scale and grow into a new distribution segment. So a completely, right now we do skincare products, but we're sold in Whole Foods, our website, and Amazon. This would put us into luxury spa beauty. Um, and so that's what I was planning to use the funding for. But I despite not getting the funding, was able to still launch this amazing product with MGM. So they did a watch party for us, which was very successful. And that business is doing very well with MGM. And so, yeah, do something outside your comfort zone. Take a chance. I think oftentimes entrepreneurs, we might think that, oh, I already took a chance because I'm an entrepreneur, I'm running my business. But even when it comes to running your business, sometimes you need to do something different.
And you know what? I want to ask you this because there's a lot of people listening in. And actually, I want to. So I ran a contest that we were giving away the book, "The Keys" by DJ Khaled. Because I love DJ Khaled.
Oh
So
yeah,
I
I
was
love
give.
him. I'm
So
trying
I
to
was.
get him to change from cocoa butter to shea butter. So if you
You
know
know
anyone,
what? Every time I see him promoting it, I just cocoa butter, like especially the one that he uses. It's like it doesn't work for me. Maybe it works for him. I don't know. But so I had a. Oh my god, did I lose it? Okay. So basically, I had people enter the contest for the book, and a lot of them were talking about. I said, "What's your dream and what's your biggest challenge in making this a reality?" And Lanisha said one of her biggest challenges is, she wants to start a business selling crafts. Her biggest challenge is her lack of confidence and motivation. And
mm,
there were a lot of people here who also talk about, just being scared to take that first step, right? So you had this passion that really fueled you, but think back to moments where you were scared to take that next step in your business. What did you tell yourself, or what helped you move forward? Like, what helped you actually put your dreams in drive?
yeah. So I'm the eldest of five. I've always had some sort of like responsibility or leadership role as long as I could remember, whether it was babysitting my younger siblings. And so for me, it was never hard for me to say to myself, oh, I'm going to try this. Because I feel like ever since I was little, I've had to do things that might be, a little bit more advanced than what you would necessarily give, a young person. So that wasn't necessarily my challenge. But fear didn't creep in until I decided to pivot and go from being just a 501c3 nonprofit organization to creating a business, so
Mm-hmm.
Shea Yeleen Health and Beauty LLC, a profit business. And I then started hitting the pavement to get my first round of private funding. So to get venture capital funding. And that was a very challenging phase for me because I was so committed to this nonprofit model. I was like, I'm gonna do a nonprofit. It's gonna be awesome. I'm, gonna have this like fully integrated model. We'll be doing all this grassroots development. We'll be creating market connections. But then it became really hard and challenging for me being in my 20s to get people to take me serious enough to give me grant funding. And it's really hard to get grant money. And so I was like sending out like grant proposals left and right, getting a million rejections, it felt like. And then, one of my advisors said to me, well, why don't you create a for-profit arm and look at social impact investing? And social impact investors are investors who want to invest in ideas that not only have the potential to be very profitable, but also have a very strong social impact, which made sense. My whole model was geared towards supporting living wages for women in these rural communities. But I could only do that if I was selling a product, right? Mm-hmm. So I decided to adjust my model and create this whole new entity. And then I had to go and pitch in front of these, Wall Street folks to try to get money. And it was terrifying. It was 100% outside my comfort zone. I've never been a math person or really felt comfortable when it came to like finances and numbers. And so it required me to kind of like observe a lot of information when it comes to understanding my financial model, my profitability, my cost of goods, all of that. And it wasn't something that I was very excited to do because it required me to be in a space where I didn't feel 100% confident. Mm-hmm. And then when I finally did get an investor that was interested and wanted to put money into Shea Yeleen, there was another layer of fear because now it was, oh, you're going to have to give up some decision making, some control in your business. I'd have to give up equity. And it was just a very new environment for me. And so it wasn't easy. But here's the thing. I had to say to myself, was I not wanting to take this leap and adjust my model and make this pivot because it was the wrong decision or because I was afraid? And there's a difference. And I had to pretty much talk myself into not making decisions because of fear. You can make decisions based on other things, right? Oh, it doesn't make financial sense. Oh, I don't really like these people. They're not a good fit. Oh, well, this isn't what I love to do. You can make those decisions based on that. But making a decision because of fear, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to, that wasn't the type of business person I wanted to be. And so I think that when it comes to your listeners who are afraid, who are hesitant, who are doubting themselves, they really need to take a step back and take the time to figure out what exactly is driving them. Is it fear or is it something else? And really make a decision based on having a firm understanding and foundation of what is preventing them from taking that leap. And if it's something like, oh, I don't have any money, or I don't have a business plan yet, or I don't know what my marketing would look like, those are all things that can be addressed, right? Mm-hmm. Whether you're utilizing free programs like the SCORE SBA program, whether you're taking advantage of free workshops in your local community. I mean, most districts want to have business leaders within their community because that's a job generator. And so, like, for example, I live in DC. and the DC government, they host different things to support entrepreneurs and to support business leaders. And so there's always a solution, right? If you feel like you're not prepared for something, you can definitely get prepared. But the fear thing is something that requires you to really look at what you're afraid of and do it despite that fear, right? Because I just don't think fear is a good enough reason to not give yourself a chance.
Do you think fear and not believing in yourself is the same thing? Because I've had this conversation with people where we talk about, how do you believe in yourself even if you don't believe in yourself? And it's something that I don't know how to answer it, and it's a baffling thing. Like, can you believe in yourself even if you don't believe in yourself? Or if you don't believe in yourself, maybe you really do believe in yourself because you're doubting it. It's like this never-ending circle of how to define it.
So the way I would like to answer that question is, how do you have faith? Like, think about it. What is faith? Faith is believing in something that does not yet exist, right?
Definitely.
So how do you have faith? It's the same way you answer the question of how do you believe in yourself?
I might put this in every episode moving forward because I get that. It's that whole thing where people are always like, but this person did it, but I'm not like that. They believe in themselves. I don't believe in myself. And I never thought about it from thinking of it from that
here's
lens.
The thing. Okay. So the reason why I answer it with how do you have faith is in terms of how do you believe in yourself is how will you know if you don't try? And the same thing with faith is how do you know how strong your faith is if you don't go through a challenge? If everything is hunky-dory, I don't need faith because it's great. It's wonderful. But if it's challenging, if it's causing me to stretch, if it's causing me to be uncomfortable, I still have to believe, right? So that's the practice of your faith. And it's the same thing is that when you ask yourself, how can I believe I can do this? Well, the only way you can believe you can do it is by doing it. That's the only way you can prove it to yourself.
Yep.
It's just one of those things where it's like the only way to answer that question is to do it. Now, it's really important for me to say this, which is when I started Shea Yeleen, I had absolutely no background in business. I should have been the last person to start a business. Like, seriously. I did not know a clue of how to get started. But guess what? I had the internet. Guess what? I had something I believed in. I had something that I was passionate about. There's something inside of you that just says you have to do this. And it doesn't matter who says no. I've been rejected so many times. It doesn't matter how many people will doubt you. Those things, at the end of the day, those things honestly don't matter. Because if you have a belief in wanting to see the world a certain way, then it's up to you to make that happen because no one else will do that for you, right?
Nope.
But you have to take that leap. You have to take the first step. The first step for me was learning. Again, I was a child that was very curious, read all the time. So what was my first step? My first step was researching, reading as much as I could. I would Google Shea Butter, anything that came up with Shea Butter. I would read it. I would look at the references and I would follow those references. I would Google formulations with Shea. I would Google essential oils that work with Shea. So that was what I spent my beginning time learning. I would Google cooperative development. What other companies did cooperatives? How did they set up those cooperatives? And so, but that's my personality, is to learn, to absorb information, to, that ever since I was little, that was the way I I was. So also understanding how you are as well. Some people are really creative, and so they may have taken a different approach, or some people like to talk to people. So they may set up informational meetings with so many different people at different companies to learn. And so you have to start somewhere. Start with what is essentially your personality, what aligns with who you are. And I think a lot of times this fear and this doubt is something that either someone has told you or taught you, but I don't think that is human nature to be doubtful, because look at little kids. They're not like that at all.
Yep. They
Little
say the darndest things and they do the darndest things too.
Yeah, little kids don't say, "Oh, can I walk?" They just start from crawling, right? They don't, and then they fall a bunch of times and they get up and they keep doing it. So I don't think it's our human nature to be doubtful or to not believe in ourselves. I think that's something that's very much societal and taught. So who are you? Like, how do you learn? And that's how you start. Start there.
And it goes back to also, if we want to take it back to the beginning of being comfortable with who you are, right? Because a lot of times we don't want to listen to who we are. So let's say you learn, you're a visual learner, right? But you keep doing everything that a non-visual learner shouldn't be doing because you think being a visual learner isn't good enough, right? It's not the right type of learner. But if you had just listened to yourself, you would have you would have saved a lot of time and learned a lot more, because you weren't actually retaining any of that information because you weren't consuming it in a way that you were going to retain it. You know what I mean? So it really goes back to that first thing you said about being comfortable being different and embracing your different as well.
Exactly. I was just going to say, we literally just come full circle. Yeah.
So let's talk about this. Let's transition before we get into our lightning round. So I'd love to ask everyone this: is what keeps you going when you feel like giving up? Because I know there's been challenges with Shea Yeleen over the years, but how have you worked through those challenges and kept going?
I have a very high tolerance to disappointment. And so I think that high tolerance to rejection and disappointment has definitely been in my favor. But when I have like a really tough day, and 2016 was like an entirely tough year. It wasn't until the last 2 months of the year where there was a turning point and things actually started moving in the right direction. And some days it felt absolutely impossible to get out of bed. It was just so hard. I'm not going to lie. It was very challenging because the stakes were higher, of course. I, got my first round of funding. I'm in stores. There are sales targets I have to hit. I'm trying to do more projects with the women. We were trying to set up this loan and savings program that we piloted and wanted to expand. And so it just felt very, very high pressure year. And I just, had these very big visions of what I wanted to do and also where I wanted the company to be at. And it just felt like I was missing targets left and right. So it was very hard emotionally. And it was a challenging year. And I think for me, one of the things that I've cultivated over the years, and even before I started Shea Yeleen, is just having my own spiritual practice and something that I commit to. And I really advise this for anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur or choose an entrepreneurial journey, because you have to have something that kind of resets you, whether it's yoga, whatever that practice is. You need that ability to kind of go back into yourself and rejuvenate, reset, whatever that is for you. And for me, my Christian practice has been really essential and critical to help me kind of deal with some of the ups and downs I've had to deal with running Shea Yeleen. And it's one of those things where I would say year 2, year 3, I had to have a serious conversation with myself as to, was I in this for the long haul, or was I in this for just a little bit of time? Like, how committed was I to Shea Yeleen and this idea? How committed was I to these women? And I think that you need to have, whatever your business idea is, you need to have that conversation with yourself. And for me, I was in it for the long haul. It wasn't, Shea Yeleen didn't start growing till 7.5, 8 years in. So think about all that time, all those years of working, and not seeing a lot of the progress I was looking for. But then, when I did my pivot, things started looking up. We were getting distribution and all of that stuff. And so it's one of those things where you have to say to yourself, how long will I do this? How long am I committed to this? And that was a conversation I had very early on. And you mentioned earlier in our conversation, most businesses fail in 3 years. And I'm sure there's a lot of different reasons as to why. But I also think 3 years is not a long time to create a successful business. I just don't think that if you're talking about, at least for me, my vision is very big, creating multi-million-dollar company, it's not going to happen in 3 years. And so I think part of what we don't hear when we hear that statistic is that it takes a long time to build a brand. And if you look,
sustainable brand, reality. Right? There's a lot of one hit. Do you want your brand to be a one-hit wonder? Or do you want it to be, what's the word? What would you call Mariah Carey? Like somebody who's had longevity, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, longevity, yeah. A diva as well. But no, and I think that everyone's like, oh, you didn't make it in 3 years. Well, you tried. Pat on the back. No, it takes much longer. And if you look at any of the brands that have been around, they've had those stories. Like Under Armour didn't become a success overnight. They were rejected tons of times, and now they're like outfitting all the major sports leagues. And, it's a local business in the Baltimore area. And I think we live in such a fast food mentality world that it's like get rich quick schemes. And it's like, that's not the reality. If you're thinking about being a disruptor, if you're thinking about being an innovator, if you're thinking about creating something with social impact, good luck if it's going to happen in 3 years. It likely won't.
And that's why it's also so important to do your research so that you have realistic goals. Because a lot of people are just out here starting businesses and, thinking they're going to hit the lottery in next month. And then they give up. And they could be people who would have been really good entrepreneurs if they have had those realistic goal settings and had been grounded in research of the industry and research of the business and had been, taken the time to research all different types of entrepreneurs and different people's stories. And definitely if you take the time to read the stories, you'll know that Oprah didn't make it in a year, 2 years. Oprah was doing local TV for a long time before, Dennis Swanson gave her own show. So definitely.
No, absolutely. And I also think that it's important for people to recognize that there's unconscious bias. And if you are an entrepreneur of color, if you are a woman entrepreneur, you're going to have to deal with that. And, it's not an excuse, but it's the reality. There'll be certain opportunities that you may not have access to simply because of your color or your gender. And that's the world we live in. I think it's important that people understand that it's not something that's going to be easy, nor is it something that's going to happen quickly. And if you truly believe in your idea, your vision, whatever it may be, having that very serious conversation with yourself in terms of how long am I committed to this? Am I committing to this? I think will help to level set expectations. So when it's that 3-year mark, you're not shutting the door because you realize, for the industry that I'm in, for the fact that I haven't gotten funding or haven't gotten access to certain distribution deals, it's going to take me a little longer, and that's okay.
Definitely. So let's go into our lightning round, Rahama. I said Rahama, sorry. Rahama. Sorry, I'm sorry. Let's go into our lightning round, and I'm going to give you a prompt, and I want you to tell me the first word that comes to mind. And remember, we're sticking with our whole dreams and drive metaphor here, okay?
Okay.
All right, so the first word is park.
Tree.
Reverse.
I can't think of anything for reverse.
Anything.
Rethink.
Neutral.
Faith.
Drive.
Forward.
And if you want to be a dream driver, you have to have your keys to success. So tell me 3 things that you think every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road.
Commitment. Knowledge or understanding, meaning you really have to understand the industry that you're going to be in. And not from a superficial level, but like the intricacies of that industry. Become an expert. I say this all the time. I can go toe to toe with anybody when it comes to Shea Butter. It doesn't matter how long they've been in the industry. And so I think that's very, very important. Be an expert. And part of that is 100% do not start a business unless you understand your financial model. I think oftentimes people start companies, and part of the reason why they are not successful is they haven't thought about what the financial model is. And the financial model is the foundation of your business. What is your cost? How are you going to generate revenue? What are your margins? Do you have to share those margins? If you're in a retail setting, you have to share those margins. Are you going to use a distributor? How much is that going to cost? How much does it cost you to get your product from production to the customer? All of that stuff. Until you have that, don't even think about starting your business. And oftentimes, because it can feel daunting and challenging, the financial part of the business is the last thing that entrepreneurs look at. It needs to be the first thing.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I wish we talked about that part even more. Maybe that could be a part 2. We have to come back and talk about that.
I'm going to come back. Oh, I've made so many mistakes. I've made so many mistakes from that standpoint. I'm happy to give you guys the 411.
No, because I think it's something that, and even within our community, the finance, I just was talking to, Tanya Rapley, who has her own MyFab Finance, her community, and our money mindset, the way that we approach financial literacy, we need to educate ourselves more within the community, and that's just something that I think is so important, especially to younger millennial entrepreneurs who want to start businesses, but they may be the creatives, because our audience, dream drivers, we're the creatives, we're the lifestyle people. Right. We may not be the best at math, and that may be what has, I hate math. I hate the statistics in college, but understanding that is going to be crucial to having your brand really be a player within your industry that you're trying to get into. So
absolutely.
Do you have any resources that you think would be helpful to anyone listening?
Yes. The SBA SCORE program, I would 100% recommend. And it's a program where retired executives are matched to entrepreneurs and small business owners And they help you with everything from creating your financial model, helping you flesh out your business plan, looking at your marketing plan, marketing techniques, and they give you advice. And it can be executives from any industry that you can think of. And so for me, when I was getting ready to pitch to venture capitalists, a SCORE advisor helped me pull together my financials, pull together my business plan so that I could be ready for that pitch. So I would recommend the SCORE program. I recommend looking at your local government resources around small business development, because wherever you live, there are local government resources for that. And sign up for their workshops, sign up for their newsletter, go to their meetings. I think that there are not enough entrepreneurs who are engaged on the policy side, which is really important and key, because small business owners are the economic powerhouse of any economy. And so you need to get involved on the policy side. I think that's really important. And also know the resources that are available at your local chamber of commerces. There's Women's Chamber of Commerces. There are not small business chamber of commerces, but for example, there's a chamber of commerce that works on African businesses. So it's like a Africa Business Chamber of Commerce. Mm-hmm. I'm utilizing that to showcase that there are different types of chamber of commerces. And so research and find the one that would work for you. And the Department of Commerce, which is a federal agency, has tons of resources for small businesses. And they're also doing a much better job of looking at supporting entrepreneurs. Go to their website. You can find a plethora of different resources. They also do workshops and they have different people that are in their different offices across the country that support small businesses and entrepreneurs. Utilize that. This is where our taxpayers' dollars are going to. So utilize these resources. They're here for you. The other thing I would say is don't pay a consultant for something that you could do simply by researching. There are, I'll just give a perfect example of this, which is getting into MGM. I really leveraged being a minority supplier diversity program, and Shea Yeleen is a certified minority and woman-owned business. And that really gave me the opportunity to get my foot in the door. Now, it doesn't necessarily give you the contract. You still have to do work, but it gets your foot in the door, which is important. But there are a lot of consultants out there that are like, oh, I'll help you get your certification. Pay me a couple $1,000s. I paid $0. And the reason why I did that is because I chose to utilize free resources versus spending money on something that I didn't need to spend money on. And I think that one of the things that I've had a lot of frustration with as a small business owner are consultants who, I don't want to be negative because I do know there are consultants out there who are great, but I think that you have to be careful how you spend your money, and don't spend your money with a consultant who can do something that you, if you take the time, could do for yourself.
That's so true. I think that's a great way to end it. And ... to be continued. I feel like there's so many other things we need to talk about, but we could be talking here till tomorrow morning.
Right.
This has been such a pleasure, Rahama, just talking to you about Shea Yeleen and about your childhood and everything. I really, really enjoyed this episode, and I hope that you enjoyed, teaching our dream drivers about your business and about ways that they can put their dreams in drive. So can you tell them where they can get in contact with you if they want to learn more about your business or just want to, send you a tweet or something?
Yes. Well, it has been awesome. I do feel like we could talk for another 2 hours. So we definitely need to continue this for another time. This was so much fun. And all of your listeners can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at Shea Yeleen. So that's SHEAYELEEN. And they can follow me on Twitter, my first name, TU and Wright, my last name. And then Instagram, my first name Rahama, last name Wright. They could go to our website as well, sheayeleen.com. And being part of the Queen Boss Show has really helped us in terms of our social media engagement. So I really encourage them to continue to watch the show because it is supporting women of color entrepreneurs. And we're really hoping that they'll renew a season, but that requires viewers. So really hope that people will keep continuing to tune in to Queen Boss.
Thank you, Rahama. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And I was really intrigued by the beginning of just your childhood. That was just me being personally inquisitive too.
No, that's totally.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, no one's ever asked me that. I was like, what was I thinking about at 8?
Because I know I was like a weird kid. I was the kid who like I made up like I thought I was a teacher. I had my own attendance. I had my own lunch chart. I'd made lesson plans for my teddy bears. It was real intense up in here in this Campbell classroom. I was very intense with my students.
Yeah, hilarious. So I was not the only serious child. Good.
No, I was pretty serious. It's funny because I just found I should do a poster on this. I have a binder where when I was younger, I had this business called Designs by Raina, and the detail by which I had this little binder, I had color swatches. So I basically used to paint wooden blocks for people and design these wooden blocks. And I had color swatches, I had print swatches, I had order forms, receipts. Like it was really intense. I'm like, wow, I was like 10 years old doing all of this. Yes.
That's so funny. Oh gosh. But it just shows you like those years are very formative, and like who we are at the core is always there. It can't go away. So really like what you were saying about just truly accepting who you are is the first step to fully becoming who you're meant to be in this world. I am available if any of your viewers have questions or anything. I'm here.
All right, you probably get a lot of pings of people who want to talk to you. It's funny because one of my I had a guest, Kwame Christian, who was talking about how to be a better negotiator, and he sent me screenshots of people who were reaching out to him on LinkedIn. I'm like, that's so cool! Like people are finding your story and wanting to connect with you on a professional level. So you never know.
That is so important for our community, though. Like we like it's so important. I just feel like for those of us who, again, have gotten to a certain point where we can actually share our lessons and help other people learn, that is so, like anyone can contact me about getting into Whole Foods and I'll be like, this is what I did not know. I wish people would have told me this would happen, because I think part of the reason why you don't see us in a lot of environments in our community is that most people just don't know how to navigate. Like when I go to a lot of these meetings, I'm the only person of color or I'm the only woman of color. And it's like, it's the 21st century. Why are we still so few in a lot of these different spaces? And it's the lack of knowledge, lack of awareness. And we didn't touch upon this, but part of that fear, I think regardless of who it is, the fear people have in terms of taking that leap is not wanting to fail, of course, but also not wanting to make a mistake.
Yep.
And if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to be comfortable making mistakes. There are some days you're just going to blow it. It's just not, you're going to make a mistake, but you learn from that mistake. And what I think that in our community of people of color, we still have this hang up over mistakes because we've already been put into a category of the no goods. Like, you guys will never be good. You'll never be good enough. And I think that internalization makes us even further averse to taking that leap because we don't want to make that mistake.
And we feel like we can't afford to make it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Because already it's like, exactly. No, and it's a psychological thing. I think it's even more in our community. But if I'm willing to, say, hey, Raina, like, this is a mistake I made when I went into Whole Foods. You don't make that mistake. You avoid it. Try to avoid it. Learn from that. that at least gives you a little bit of comfort and some more confidence when you go in. You'll be better prepared. And I think we need to do more of that in our community.
Yeah, and I know personally about the Whole Foods. Whole Foods can be really tough because one of my mentors, Dawn Fitch of Puka Pure and Simple. Have you heard of that company?
Pure and simple.
Puka, Pooka, Puka Pure and Simple. She started the company when she was having a lot of health crises, and she realized that all these ingredients of the products that she was putting in her skin were really bad for her. So anyway, fast forward, she's in a lot of the local New Jersey, New York City, like the East Coast Whole Foods, and she had a lot of problems with them, especially on the return side, because I think like Whole Foods allows people to return, and then they charge back for what. So yeah, that was something she was talking to me about. So sometimes distribution can be, it's good for marketing, it's good getting your brand out there, but at the same time you have to also then apply the things that you never think about, the chargebacks and all that stuff that on the business side you also have to put into, like, make sure you're accounting that into your cost and your price structure and all that stuff.
And that's why the financials model is so important. So important. Literally, anytime someone asks me, like, how do I start? I'm like, you need to start with the financial model. Don't even market your idea. Don't put up your website. Don't do none of that until you have your financial model.
Yeah. Because you're going to be mad if your passion project ain't paying you.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, so we're done for real now.
All right, we're done. Okay, can you please hang up?
All right, so that's a wrap for episode 64 with Rahama. I hope that you guys enjoyed listening to her share her dream driving story as well as her keys to success. If you want today's show notes, just go to dreamsanddrive.com and click on episode 64. And don't forget to enter our giveaway of the week. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com/win to enter for your chance to win a Shea Yeleen gift set, which includes a body butter, soap, and lip balm. To share your favorite moments from the show, make sure to go on social and follow us at Dreams and Drive across the board, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can also use the hashtag Dreams and Drive. Last but not least, if you haven't already, make sure you are subscribed to our show wherever you're listening, whether that be iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, Stitcher. Hit the subscribe so that you get alerts every time we have a new episode. And if you really love the episode, go ahead and leave a review. I love going in and seeing what you guys are saying about the show, and it just is so positive and so inspiring to see all the feedback that you are sharing. Once again, I appreciate you all. Please, please, please don't make this be the only show that you listen to. Episode 63 with Nicole Kane was a hit, so go back and listen to that one if you haven't already. Keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again in episode 65.